What's up, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I think that Teen Mom 2 star Kailyn Lowry might have all but confirmed that she has gotten back together with her two-time baby daddy, Chris Lopez. Yes, the same Chris Lopez that she called a sperm donor on last week's Baby Mamas No Dramas, or was it Coffee Combos podcast? One of the two. It's quite wild, you guys. So this is a recap of what went down on yesterday's episode of her Baby Mamas No Dramas podcast. So basically, at the beginning of the podcast, she talks about how she and Joe are back to fighting again. You know how they've been doing the whole kumbaya thing for quite a while now. Well, that kind of came to a tragic halt about 2 weeks ago. And if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you notice that V did a podcast episode with someone else. Then Kail did a podcast episode with someone else. They claimed that it was scheduling issues, and they're still kind of claiming that too, but they are at least being honest that there is a little bit of discord between Kail and Joe. And so I don't know if things have cleared up or not, but when you read between the lines on what it is that caused their issues, they never outright say. It seems as though they might be stemming from a certain Chris Lopez. So first of all, I have to give a huge shout out to Watermelon, because as usual, she is on the ball. She just sniffs this stuff out before anybody else. She had been kind of calling it a while ago. She's like, you know what? I think that Kail and Chris are back together. So head over to her Instagram page. I'm going to link to it down below, and you're going to see little hints that Kail and maybe Chris as well have been dropping, that they have been kind of getting back together or knocking boots. I don't know what it is, but you do see it. So some of the things are, Chris has been defending Kail a lot on his Instagram lives. He has not been releasing episodes of his PTSD podcast, which, typically he uses to throw shots at Kail. And there was a third one that I am forgetting, but again, go to Watermelon's Instagram page and you will see all of that information. Actually, no, the third one we're going to get into because she answers it in this podcast. The third one is that Kail was asking people for their opinions on how or whether or not people who have had publicly messy relationships and breakups can get back together and explain getting back together to the public. If that doesn't scream Kail Lowry, I don't know what does. So getting into the recap of the podcast episode, again, she's talking about how she and Joe fell out, and then she and V did not film 2 weeks worth of episodes together, And then she says, listen, I'm never getting along with all three of my baby daddies at the same time. It's always, at least 2 out of 3. When it's 1 out of 3, then I'm in a bad mood because it's awful. And I start thinking, am I the problem? So she's saying currently she is on good terms with Javi and she is on good terms with Chris. So in fact, she said that she actually had Javi around Chris the other day, which had me questioning how that was even possible, because I think the only reason that Kail is ever around Javi is whenever their son Lincoln has some sort of a football or some sort of a baseball game, right? And Chris is not around for those things because Kail has been telling us all this time that Chris is, a deadbeat who's never really around for his kids, So if Kail only ever spends time around Javi because of Lincoln's football games and because of Lincoln's baseball games, does that mean that Chris descended from his grandma's attic to join her in watching Lincoln's football and baseball games? Because that's the impression that I got from the whole entire thing. And to me, it's okay, well, is it a coincidence that now that Chris is allegedly coming around, for whatever reason, she is suddenly not getting along with Joe? Because I personally think that Joe has enough sense to tell her, listen, this relationship is toxic and I don't want our child around it. Stop bringing this kind of negative, allegedly violent energy around our child. He's too old for this mess. Isaac is 12 years old. If you're going to be running around beating up your baby daddy's running around beating you up, why do you want this around your 12-year-old? I could totally see Joe putting his foot down about it. And, I'm quite surprised that if this is the case, because this is all alleged, of course, I'm really surprised that Javi is not in the same boat. Why would Javi want this around his own kid as well? You would think that he would team up with Joe and say, listen, we are going to take you to court and we are going to let you have it if you continue on in this relationship with Chris. You have so many court documents between the two of you. There are arrests between the two of you because this relationship is unhealthy. And if you really try it with us, we will take away these kids. We will get more time with these kids because you clearly are not fit to have them around. And this relationship is not something that they deserve to be around. And so the conversation then shifts into Kail bringing up that thing that Joe said to her and V that made them start to get along. She's like, I was just thinking the other day, someone asked me, like, if something were to happen to me, would my kids still grow up together? Would they still see each other very often? And she says that she doesn't think that the baby daddies would keep up with each other like that. V claims that Joe at least would get together with Javi pretty regularly to get those kids together, Isaac and Lincoln. And then Kail doesn't really believe it. She's like, no, I don't really believe it. I think that they would try for a little bit, but they would just kind of fizzle out. And then V kind of recalls the fact that, yeah, you know what? Joe and Javi used to hang out and then their relationship kind of just fizzled out. So maybe that's the case. But she did try to push, the idea that she and Joe would at least get together with Javi to get those two, kids to grow up as brothers in some respect. And then V also adds, and I also think that he would with Javi because he's got no issues with Javi. All right, well, that's a hint, right? Because it means that if he's got no issues with Javi, he might have an issue with baby daddy number 3. And if baby daddy number 3 is back in the picture and Joe has an issue with baby daddy number 3, then why wouldn't it cause an issue between Joe and Kail? Right? I'm really thinking that she is starting to drop these hints that she is back together with Chris. And I honestly do not blame Joe for, letting Kail know where he honestly stands on the idea of her getting back together with someone who she has repeatedly claimed has been violent with her and that the children have allegedly witnessed it and towards whom she has also been violent as well. It is just not the move. Kail then takes the opportunity to speak for Chris and she says that she knows for a fact that Chris would never bring their kids around, Lux and Creed, to see Isaac and Lincoln, which made me wonder, then why are you even with him? If this man has no care in the world for your children who grew up as siblings, pretty close, because that's something that's really important to Kail. She works really hard to make sure that she always has all of these kids together at the same time, And so if you know that the person you're allegedly back together with, sure, you're excusing the violence or whatever. And you know that if something were to happen to you, that they would not care about your kids, maintaining a brotherhood bond, a sibling bond, then why are you with them? To me, this is a self-drag. You know what I mean? She says that, when it comes to the significant others, Lauren still hates her. And I'm like, oh, we're talking about significant others and we're bringing up Lauren, which means, y'all, is Lauren back for more of Javi's cheating? Because that is what it sounds like as well. She kind of doubles down on it again. And I really think that that is the case. Lauren and Kail really have horrible decision-making skills. They need to get together because what they accept in relationships is very unique. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. Maybe they can help each other find some self-esteem to move on for these sorts of relationships or something, grow together, because this is just not healthy, the stuff that they are accepting for themselves and for their children. So Kail says, listen, Creed's first birthday is coming up and I want to invite all of the baby daddies and all of their significant others to the party. And then she goes, but I don't know if she would come. V goes, who? Kail goes, Lauren still hates me. Am I reading too much into it? Is Lauren still hot? Am I reading too much into it, you guys? Does that mean that Lauren is still Javi's significant other? Or just because she wants Javi's kid Eli to come, that maybe because Lauren is Eli's mom, she wants her to come as well? I don't know, but I personally read it as Lauren is back together with Javi. I do know that maybe a month ago, there was photos that surfaced on Instagram of Lauren at the sugar factory at the same time as Javi at the sugar factory at the same table. They both posted stories, across from each other, but not including each other. And you detectives managed to stitch everything together and realize they're at the same place, same time, same table. So yeah, I would not really be surprised at all. And so Kail then talks about, asks a lot of advice about what V thinks about the idea of someone getting back together with someone who had a tumultuous, public relationship, public breakup. And so her example was Chloe and Tristan, right? But we all know that she's secretly asking about herself, because to me, it's okay, well, this is a topic that you're asking, Kail, but why? And why would you not give your own thoughts about it? Kail never gave her own thoughts about the topic. It was V who gave the advice. Kail just kept asking more questions. She's yeah. And how would you handle the public backlash and stuff? And like, how would you handle this? And how would you handle that? How would you tell people? Like, she kept asking, like, she was hanging on V's every word because this was advice that she was probably taking to heart from her own situationship. And, like that just makes me so sad for her that this is the situation that she is finding herself in, with Chris. Like, I really don't understand what she sees in this man. Like, he literally, in my opinion, has nothing to offer a woman, especially a woman, like a mother of 4 children. Like, sorry, what does Chris bring to the table? You know what I mean? He does not even bring wood. I think all he brings is termites to eat that table that you have set out for yourself. I don't get it. I really do not understand it. And so, yeah, like the way she just kept asking V all those questions and like, like you could tell she was really thinking about everything that V was saying. And the fact that she never once gave like her own advice on how to deal with these public relationships lets me know that something is in the works in regards to Kail's own relationship status. And then when you add it up with everything going on with Chris taking a little hiatus from his podcast, heavily defending her on Instagram lives, and then what else? Joe falling out with Kail recently, and then Javi spending time around Chris, but the only time Kail's around Javi is at Lincoln's, sports games. Does that mean that, she's picking up Chris, bringing him to the sports games with her? That is what it is all sounding like to me at this point. Then, after the whole Chloe and Tristan, which is French for Chris and Kail, she then claims that she's got 3 friends going through breakups. And then one of them had a very public breakup or something like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know, girl. I also want to ask you guys for advice. Okay. I have a friend. She's not a YouTuber. She's a Twitch streamer. And you know what I mean? I'm asking for a friend. Sure, Jan, kind of a situation. I don't believe anything it is that she is saying at this point. So they then kind of move on a little bit. Well, Kail then finally adds her 2 cents. She's like, listen, if I were in a relationship, the people who matter most are the ones who would be the first to know. And then I would post it on social media because I don't really want everybody in my business. It's exactly why I'm posting it on social media, right? And then she's like, listen, the media in general, not just social media, but the public played a large part in her divorce from Javi. And to me, it's like, really, it was the public that played a huge part. It was the media and not your mutual cheating. Okay. And then she's like, I have a hard time being affectionate on television, and it really makes me look like some sort of an ice queen. And so looking back at the earlier seasons of Teen Mom 2, I can see why Javi felt like I didn't love him because I feel embarrassed and I do have a difficult time showing affection on television. And I totally get that for her. And it makes me feel bad for her because, they film so many, so often, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, well, if that's like a huge part of your life and then like you're not being affectionate to your husband, he doesn't feel like you love him, but you're having a difficult time because of the cameras, that does kind of weigh on a relationship and kind of help to tear things apart. So I definitely felt bad for her on that front. And then they go into people accusing Kail and V of doing coke because Kail had a nosebleed recently and then V is always sniffling on that microphone in their podcast. Then they laugh about it. Kail says if she were doing coke, she would be skinny. That's not true. I know plenty of large cokeheads. So that's not true. And there are a lot of famous large cokeheads as well. It wasn't like Harvey Weinstein, a cokehead or something like that. I don't like when people say stuff like that. It's not true. Anyway, you guys, that does it. A recap of what went down on yesterday's episode of Kail's Baby Mama's No Dramas podcast. So 2 questions. Did Kail basically confirm that she and Chris are back together again? And did she also confirm that Javi and Lauren are also back together again? Make sure to let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And as usual, don't forget, is that the reason that Joe and her have fallen out? Make sure to let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And as usual, we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.